Hello, everybody. This is Zach at it again. I'm your host, Zach Cooley, and I'm honored to be here today with one of my best friends in the entire world. In my opinion, one of the best people on the planet, and definitely one heck of a drummer. And we're here today to talk about Ringo Starr and the performance that my family and I saw in his native state of West Virginia. Thank you so much, Trevor Malchano, for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. That's quite an introduction. I don't know if I can live up to that, but I'll sure try.
Being on podcasts is something that you and I have talked about doing for years, so it's exciting for me that we're finally together and getting to talk.
Yes, definitely exciting for me, too.
And you and I have been friends for, at least 20 years, probably closer to 25.
22 years or something.
Yep. Always the thing that drew us together from day one was music. Everybody else was listening to what was popular in the day, and you and I were jamming to the Beatles and Yes and Genesis and all these bands. None of the
like the old school stuff, don't we?
We do. And before I get into Ringo, I have to tell you, one of the fondest memories that I have is when you and Luke and I went down to Appalachian State University and saw a prog rock festival show that had Yes.
Yes, that's all I can say. That's right.
You're right. It had Yes, and it had Todd Rundgren.
Carl Palmer, I believe.
Yes, he was incredible too. That is one of my happiest memories, because you and I were the prog rock fans, and I saw more prog rock that night than I ever have in my whole life, and it was awesome. So.
Yeah, it was. That was a really pretty much like you saw some legends that night.
Yes, it was in the arena. So it was. I think I paid $55 for that show, and it was well worth it. And so we're going to talk about a show that, unfortunately, we were hoping to get you and Luke to join us for this one, but unfortunately you didn't make it. But you were still kind enough to come on the show and talk with me about it. And
you got to see it, though. That's really cool that you got to see it.
Well, it's especially cool that I got my 9-year-old daughter there to see Ringo Starr, because, as you know,
So Ringo's he's in his 80s now,
yes.
So that's really cool.
83.
Yep.
And a ton of energy. I mean, at the end of the concert, still jumping up and down and waving. Drummed every song, with the exception of two, where I think he stepped off stage to get a drink of water, and they did two songs without him on stage. Otherwise, the whole so at least for 2 straight hours, if he wasn't singing, he was drumming and singing, or just drumming.
Yeah, that's incredible, because
it really is.
Guys like that are not, they're not very common.
Well, it makes you understand why the Beatles were as big as they were, because talent like that happens once in a lifetime.
It does, and I was thinking about this the other day. The crazy thing about it is that the Beatles changed the game of music, but they also, as solo artists, changed the game too. So they changed the game more than once.
Yeah, because
which is an interesting thing to think about, because when you're in a band and the band breaks up, some people, they just disappear.
Mm-hmm.
But Ringo, he never did. He always came back and had his own thing going on.
Yeah, none of them really went away ever, and they won't go away.
And they stand the test of time as well. They will always stand the test of time, I do believe.
I mean, and two of them are gone now. Our personal favorite, George Harrison and John Lennon, have gone on, but they're still as popular as ever. They always will be. But there are two living Beatles. My daughter is 9 years old, and you remember from Bella being very young, 3 years old in the back seat. I remember you and her singing Beatles songs together.
Yeah. Good times when you can always identify with some music with somebody. It doesn't matter what age you are.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I thought it was pretty cool that my 3-year-old was jamming to the Beatles, and then she went to Genesis, and then now for a little bit she went to Michael Jackson, but I think she's back to Genesis now, so that's cool. But yeah, she is a good kid.
Speaking of Michael Jackson, you know, we can transition into talking about how Steve Lukather has played on a lot of Michael Jackson records. You know,
yes.
And stuff. And he's a underrated guitar player, really, because he played on so many albums.
Yep.
And so many hit songs that people don't even realize that he was on there.
As a member of Ringo's all-star band, he was a key player in this show, playing some hit songs from Toto. He did, of course, Rosanna, Africa, and my personal favorite from his set list was Hold the Line. That's one of my mama's favorites, so I always think about her. But as you said, Bella was more impressed with him when I told her that he actually played on Thriller. Also in that lineup was legendary Edgar Winter, who
that's a true classic rock legend right there, for sure.
76 years old, and he really revved up the crowd with Free Ride.
I don't know that many people on planet Earth have ever been able to rock as hard as Edgar Winter.
And he was still rocking. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But Free Ride, he really got the crowd revved up with that. He, of course, mid-show did Frankenstein and did this incredible drum duet because he can play everything.
Is he still playing the sax live?
Yes. There were two.
That's amazing.
There were two saxophone players. He did the synthesizer keyboard.
And he does percussion well too.
And he played the drums. And he and Greg Bissonette, you know, me being a Phil Collins fan first and foremost, if somebody's doing a drum duet, I'm paying attention, or a drum solo, I'm paying attention. So
speaking of drum solos, we can transition back into Ringo, because one of the Mount Rushmore drum solos for me was the end on Abbey Road.
Very good.
When he put that drum solo down on Abbey Road, that changed the game for me.
Yeah. Do you think, as a drummer yourself, what do you draw from him in the way that he plays, and where does he sit as like on the list of drummers for you?
I paid attention to more of the techniques and stuff like that, and the equipment he used.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the first song I ever learned from the Beatles was I Feel Fine.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really technical type of song that nobody gave enough credit to, because he was getting some good beats on the ride cymbal and then going to the tom-tom, as he played it. It's kind of a tricky groove, if you will.
Yeah.
And then, as I got more into the Beatles, there were songs like Day Tripper and anything off of Sgt. Pepper's.
Right.
And stuff like that got me very interested in the way he drummed. And Come Together on Abbey Road was also a good one, because it's an iconic drum beat right there.
Yeah, it really was. And in terms of what he did on his own at the show, he only did a couple of Beatles songs. One of them was What Goes On. He said that was the only one written by Lennon, McCartney, and Starkey. And he said, and I was looking at the credits, and I was thinking, man, this would look a whole lot better the other way around. He wanted to be listed first. And It Don't Come Easy, which is his solo thing, and then I Want to Be Your Man, and but
It
really,
Don't Come Easy is one of the first solo songs from Ringo I do believe I heard. And
yeah,
it's a great tune. He just has a way of finding how to songwrite and how to put the groove to it and just make it work, you know.
and Back Off Boogaloo was another one of his solos, and Act Naturally. The best ones were when he did With a Little Help from My Friends, which he closed. And he did do Photograph, which is another one of his big solo hits.
Right. Yeah, that is a big hit.
But he got everybody into it with Yellow Submarine. And for the 9-year-old there, Yellow Submarine's always a big hit. Everybody liked that one.
And Yellow Submarine was, to me, a defining moment, not only with the music but with the movie they put out.
Yeah.
So I think that was really cool, the way they were combining music videos and music production, and they were doing a lot of things at that time that a lot of bands could not do.
And us being big prog fans like we are, Sgt. Pepper was the original first ever prog album, many say.
Yep, that's how they would state it, is Sgt. Pepper's kind of started progressive rock.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of agree, but progressive rock is such a hard term to define anyway.
Right.
So it could be anything. I do know that when the Beatles started using different recording technology and different cameras and stuff to film themselves, they were able to really get ahead of the rest of the competition out there, if you will. Music's not a competition, it's an art form, but at the point in time you are competing for a spot on the Ed Sullivan Show or whatever it might be, and so you have to kind of have all your ducks in a row to do that.
The thing is, at 60 years ago, you had to have talent to make it in the business. Nowadays, Justin Bieber can make a video in his room in 2 minutes and become an overnight sensation. But back then, there were defining things that let you know
They were definitely defining a lot of recording engineering technology and stuff like that.
Right.
There was a thing they used called ADT. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
No.
It's called artificial double tracking. So what it did was that when they played one guitar in a mono, it made it sound like they invented this stuff in Abbey Road, I do believe, that made it sound like 2 guitar players at once. So it would make it sound like a full band when it was just one guitar player playing that part.
Yeah, which is very innovative in recording music still today.
Yeah. They were so innovative for recording. That's one of my favorite things about the Beatles and Ringo especially, because they were always trying to innovate, or else they would.
Right, and Abbey Road is, if you say that you have cut an album at Abbey Road, you pretty much made it in the music business, whether that album becomes a hit or not.
Yeah, Abbey Road has got to be one of the most iconic studios in the world.
And naturally, because it was the Beatles studio. So
they had Alan Parsons was an engineer on that album, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
And he also engineered Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. So he knew what he was doing back then.
Absolutely. And he, of course, is one of the progressive rock greats. But then other members of the All-Star Band, with Edgar Winter, what I thought was interesting about him, he said at the show, he said, he invented the strapped synthesizer. the portable synthesizer,
like the guitar thing,
and play. Yes, he said he was the first person in music history to put a strap on a keyboard to go down front, because he said,
I've never heard that story, but I believe him, and that's pretty interesting.
He put the strap on the keytar. Is that what that's called?
Yeah, and I've always wanted a keytar, to be honest with you.
And then after he said that, he said, so once I invented that, I had to write a song. And then he goes into Frankenstein, which is that incredible duet with Greg Bissonette. And
Bissonette, we'll speak on him for a second.
Yeah.
He's one of the most skilled drummers in the world. And he's done so many albums with so many people. There's really nothing he can't do.
Right. And that was evident that night in Charleston. He's the youngest member of the band, 64 years old, from Detroit. He played drums on every number. There was like 24 numbers. And he doubled.
I think he could probably learn 100 songs in a day if he wanted to. That's how good he is.
And he doubled with Ringo on most of them. He's best known for his work with David Lee Roth. I think he played on 3 of David's biggest albums, but he's also played with
played on hundreds of albums. Just one with one artist.
Oh yeah, and he's played with other artists, including but not limited to ELO, the Electric Light Orchestra, the Doobie Brothers, and Santana.
Now he's one of the last remaining old school guitarists too, because we're losing a lot of these heroes that we have.
Yeah, people nowadays think of Santana as the guy who duetted with Rob Thomas, when really he was one of the original Woodstock players.
Yes, absolutely.
Black Magic Woman.
In 1972, he put out a killer album that I love called Caravan Cry, and that's one of my favorite albums. So when you lose people like that, you won't have people replacing them. Not replacing them.
It doesn't come back. And another member of the all-star band that was kind of in the background, but I mean he was awesome too, because he played the drums, he played sax, and even played the harmonica. Warren Ham, and he's also another fairly young one compared to the other guys, from Fort Worth, Texas, and he has played with Kansas, Toto, and Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, among many others.
He must be pretty good, if he can play with those type of cats. Yep.
Edgar Winter, who hailed him as the hardest working man in the music business. Colin Hay from Men at Work. He was with him when I saw him in Roanoke in 2019. My personal favorite from the Average White Band, Hamish Stewart, because they did Pick Up the Pieces, which is a great jazz funk instrumental, and they also did one of the ones when he was off stage was to Cut the Cake, which not a lot of people know, but it was a great number that got everybody up and moving. Hamish is 74, and he is Scottish, actually, which I thought was very interesting.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And just like Colin Hay, and who is half Scottish, half Australian. And I loved when he did, because we just lost one of the Isley brothers, just like a day after that concert, and he did an Isley Brothers tune that they had a hit with called Work to Do, which was one of my favorites in the set. And Edgar Winter, talking about rock legends passing away, his brother Johnny Winter passed away in 2014. So
it's unfortunate. And, I always used to listen to the Johnny Winter song Still Alive and Well.
Mm-hmm.
And, he used to make me think that, rock and roll was still alive and well. But
right.
It's kind of seemed like it's going slightly down the tubes now. And if you listen to modern music, there's not a whole lot of guitars in the mainstream anymore or anything like that. So.
Which, not a whole lot of instruments in the mainstream anymore. But,
Well, Joe Walsh is another one I was wanting to touch on, because he used to say that people would play an album, but nobody actually plays on it. They record an album with nobody playing on it.
Exactly. And he is also, of course, a legendary Eagle, but he's also one of the original members of Ringo's All-Star Band.
If I'm not mistaken, he's Ringo's stepson or something, isn't he?
Is that right? Now that I didn't know, or
I think he might have married Ringo's daughter or something.
Hadn't heard about that. Okay, I didn't know.
So he's been, him and Ringo are big buddies. And so Joe Walsh once said that if there's one thing about Ringo's drumming that you can count on, is that if he starts a song at a certain tempo, he's going to end it at the same tempo. He's going to be in perfect time the whole song.
Yep, and that is true, because he started, and 83 years old, and he stayed with it the entire time. He stepped off for 2 songs. He stepped off for Cut the Cake and Frankenstein, and the rest of the time he was up there. And speaking of Edgar Winter and Johnny Winter, Edgar did a tribute album to his brother called Brother Johnny, and
I need to listen to it, though. I haven't heard it yet.
And it won the Grammy for Best Contemporary Blues Album this year. And he did a number from it, Johnny Be Good, which that had everybody on their feet. So I think next to Ringo, because obviously most people were there for Ringo, people were most impressed with him, with Edgar. And they're all legends in their own right, and we kind of forget about that until you get them up on stage together, and then you look them up and see what all they did, and you're like, man,
I think the proof is in the pudding. That there's a reason why they're legends like
right.
that,
Right, and you look them all up, and you put it all together, and you think, man, I was really lucky to have been at that show and seen all those folks, because none of them are spring chickens, none of them are going to be around forever.
Yeah. I have a couple more things I would like to touch on.
Oh, please share. Yes, absolutely.
In 1966, I think I was doing a little bit of research, but is when they played at the Beatles first played at Budokan in Tokyo, Japan. And that's when it was just a sports venue, and
right.
That's when the whole culture got mad at them. But that was the first rock concert ever there. And
that sort of
it became a major venue for rock and roll, or even music in general. And the same year, believe it or not, they played the last show ever at Candlestick Park in San Francisco, California.
Wow.
Candlestick was it was a one of those combination fields between a baseball field and a football field. So the San Francisco Giants and the 49ers both shared that stadium.
So they invented.
I don't know what year they tore it down, but that was the last concert ever held at Candlestick. Was the Beatles, I do believe.
So they invented stadium rock, more or less. Or the stadium show itself.
They brought it bigger than what it was, for sure.
Wow.
And that's amazing to think about, the transition period between the recording techniques and the people that you get to come see your concerts and your venues and all that. Yeah, they definitely were a game changer for that. And another thing I wanted to touch on is I do believe that when they played the Rooftops, the Beatles played the Rooftop, I do believe that was Ringo's idea.
Oh, okay. That's what I was going to ask you. You mean the Rooftop wasn't the final concert, but you're talking about the final concert at that venue at Candlestick Park.
No, the rooftop, the final concert.
Right.
For Beatle. Yeah. And so that was, I think they had gotten some animosity within the band or something.
Sure.
And Ringo said, well, we'll just go set up on the roof and play one final concert. And that's what they did.
Well, that's...
Don't quote me on that, but I do believe I've read that somewhere.
Well, I'm sure you're right. I would not doubt you at all on that one. But anyway, it was a great show. I wish you could have been with us. It was a great venue, too. Charleston Civic Center is a great venue because we were in section 140, and the worst thing about a guy in a wheelchair going to a concert is you pay all that money, and if you're in a wheelchair, if there's one beneficial thing about being in a wheelchair is that you usually get pretty good seats at concerts. But the problem is, if you get a good seat and everybody stands up in front of you, you can't see nothing. So it don't matter how good a seat you got unless you're in the front row.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe you should just go to a band that doesn't really bring people to their feet, so they can just
right. But why these seats were some of the best I've ever had. Section 140, it was dead in the center of the Coliseum, and we were on the risers. There was nobody in front of us. There was nobody behind us, and the people that were in front of us were down below us. So if they stood up, it wasn't going to impede my view. So
I would imagine the All-Star Band has one of the best sound crews in the world, too, so it probably sounded great.
No, I mean, and I'm glad you mentioned the sound crew, because I mean to tell you, they were working not just before the show and the setup and stuff. They were working during the show. They were moving amps and bringing other amps in, and they were on stage as the band was on stage.
It takes an army to make that stuff happen.
Yeah, moving stuff in and out. And another thing that impressed me about this show was I was so disappointed. I mean, it was easier for us, but I was so disappointed when Ringo came to Roanoke. There was less than half the house full. Roanoke Civic Center is a 10,000-seater. There's about 4,000 people there.
At the Barlow Center?
At Roanoke Civic Center, yeah, in 2019. But that with there being a smaller crowd there, that got Emily a chance. He said, y'all come on down front. And Emily looked at me and I said, go, go, go. And she took off and she got way down front and he pointed to her, which was amazing. And so that wouldn't have happened, I think, had there been a full house. But at Charleston, the capacity is 13,500, and I think there was 13,000 there.
13,000 is a packed house for sure.
Yeah. And I researched, and again, I wouldn't want to be quoted on it, but based on what I can find, no other Beatle has ever played West Virginia. So if that has indeed happened, we were part of music history, and that we might have been there the only time a Beatle played West Virginia, which I think is pretty doggone exciting.
I don't think that they have played West Virginia. I do think they played like Pittsburgh and close areas to the state of West Virginia, but not necessarily the state of West Virginia itself. Well, I do know that George Harrison used to stay up about where I'm at right now. I'm actually probably about 30 minutes away from the Hare Krishner Palace.
Really?
And George Harrison used to come up here, and he played a concert somewhere around the area, but I don't know the details because it's really lost within the archives.
Right. But how cool is that? Well, I have enjoyed this, man.
Thank you for having me on the show. Thank you very much for allowing me to be a guest on your show. And I look forward to maybe doing it again in the future.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you, and I hope we can do it again in the future.